Escapism is the tendency to seek distraction or engage in fantasy as a form of relief from an unpleasant reality. For some, this might look like playing Farming Simulator and driving a tractor for 8 consecutive hours. Others, you might want to scratch that competitive itch and climb the ranked ladder on Tekken or Street Fighter. And for others, if you hate yourself, you might want to play League of Legends. Video games are often viewed as a sort of portal to another reality, but I'd like to challenge that notion and argue that they're more like a mirror to the one that we currently live in. In this video, I want to examine a particular DLC expansion from Fallout New Vegas and how all the way back in 2011, it managed to predict the future. In Fallout New Vegas, you play as a courier tasked with the delivery of a single platinum poker chip to a post-nuclear war Las Vegas. What starts out as a very innocuous task quickly becomes very complicated. On your way to Vegas, you are adventuring across the Mojave Wasteland, visiting its inhabitants as well as the locations within the desert itself. One of which is Big Mountain, home to the think tank. The think tank is a group of esteemed scientists who in reality are more like those kids you knew in high school who'd show up every day wearing cargo shorts and that one Legend of Zelda Triforce t-shirt. We, the courier, are kidnapped and subsequently lobotomized by these geniuses back here, which you would think would make them our enemy, but you're wrong, because they're the only people who know how to get our brain back, because they lost it. Because they're geniuses. We find out pretty quickly the real culprit behind our brain theft is Dr. Morbius back there. And so until we can get our brain back into our skull, we're conscripted by the think tank to fight whatever abominations are waiting for us out in the Big Empty. Do you get it? Because the name is the Big Empty, and babe, no, you don't get it. So like the letters say Big Empty, and then after he turns himself into a pickle, right? Before stepping out into the Big Empty, we're encouraged by the doctors to go visit the Sink, which is our new living accommodation essentially, and talk to the CIU, or Central Intelligence Unit, which is basically just Jarvis that also sells you guns. The CIU tells you that he is not the only personality available for the courier to interact with inside of the Sink, meaning that all of these other devices that we have looked at and are for some reason unable to operate also can talk to us. That is after you discover the holotapes that have their backup personality files required to operate them in the first place. It's at this point I'm going to postulate that the developers started to look into their proverbial crystal ball and kind of predict the future here, because this is back in 2011 when Wi-Fi was already a thing, mind you, but save for the iPhone and a couple other like home computing devices, smart appliances weren't really a thing. You didn't incorporate Wi-Fi into things that weren't expressly made for the purpose of connecting to the internet. The devices we interact with in the Sink are overcomplicated and over-engineered. They are basic, run-of-the-mill devices you'll find in a home that serve simple functions, but are not simple to operate. After reactivating a couple of them, we're made to question whether it was really a good decision in the first place.
Ready to receive your seed.
Oh, hell yeah. I remember coming home from high school one day and my mom had bought a new Samsung fridge that was on sale because our last one broke. And walking into the kitchen, I saw that she was peeling the plastic off of a screen above the water dispenser. And for the life of me, high school Jeffrey could not comprehend why, A, our fridge was asking to connect to Wi-Fi, or 2, why the hell someone would need to go on Twitter while they got their leftovers. While I bring up that story kind of in passing as a joke, I also want to highlight that this trend of incorporating Wi-Fi and smart appliances or devices into our homes is not one that's going to slow down anytime soon. Things like the Ring doorbell or Amazon's Alexa are finding their way into almost every home that you can find, and it's not really that far-fetched to say that they're becoming living parts of your home. And with the proliferation of things like character-based AIs, I can't imagine in any way how that could possibly get worse. Bro, what the fuck? And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the almost hilarious irony there is between needing a third-party peripheral just to turn on a basic appliance. What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster. Every day that passes, I'm realizing those guys might not have been so crazy. While I want to believe that the invention of things like smart appliances, the Ring doorbell, even good old Bezos' Alexa come from a good place, it's really hard to not look at this satirization of a literal toaster with a personality and not see Jesus. Cancelled. The satirization of a literal toaster with a personality might not have been as far off as you thought it was. I'm gonna grab my hammer and sickle here real quick, comrade, and just say that trends like these are only accelerated by mechanisms such as capitalism. The desire by a corporation to cram more features and more functionality and more Wi-Fi and more apps and more subscription in the hopes of padding a company's bottom line is a very slippery slope, and it's one that we are going to continue to feel the effects of as we live in a consumeristic society. Continuing on this vein of niche, cumbersome inventions, I want to touch on the book chute, whose personality, once installed, reads a lot like a real patriot, if you know what I mean. Someone who believes in God, in Jesus, in America, and probably lowering the age of consent. His core function is to recycle pre-war reading and writing materials, and this is done by converting pre-war books into blank ones, thereby destroying that piece of seditious pre-war propaganda. The book chute as a character is kind of a combo concept between a couple things from George Orwell's 1984, namely the memory holes found in the Ministry of Truth, whereby any material or media that is found to be contradictory to the current government is disposed of, never to be found again. It's heavily implied in the game also that the books you give to the book chute are just outright burned instead of archived or replaced. At one point, the book chute even references a self-indoctrination tool, which is just a direct nod to Orwell. It's obvious that this character is meant to be a sort of hyperbole or satirization of Red Scare era rhetoric, say that 3 times fast, and censorship. And my broader point here is that censorship as a whole is a good litmus test for living in a bad society. And we, as responsible citizens, should be skeptical of mechanisms that either reinforce or platform ideologies that a current administration of government maybe promotes or even profits off of, A, or B, mechanisms that suppress or hide media that would be regarded as potentially seditious or something that contradicts a current administration's views. Jack, you don't even know what you're talking about, man. Like, America's freaking land of the free, home of the illiterate. Like, we don't even do anything like that censors foreign, like, opinions, or like, we haven't even enacted any policy recently that restricts or bans a certain country's businesses or maybe applications from entering this country. We let anyone do whatever the heck they want around here. If you thought I was talking about TikTok, you're wrong. I'm talking about League of Legends. There are bugs under your skin. You need to peel them off. Pivoting a little bit here, while the burning of books may just seem like a metaphor in the game, the idea of taking books out of circulation is not one that's foreign to my compatriots back in Florida. Florida, the state I grew up in, by the way, has been on the map for a while now due to its book banning efforts, although the executive office of Governor DeSantis would counter that, saying that House Bill 1467, the alleged book ban law, requires school districts to provide transparency in the selection of instructional materials, including library and reading materials, going on to argue that this process protects children from indoctrination. I'm not saying we need to give kids unfettered access to all media. Like, take it from me, I was on fucking E-Bombs World when I was like in 1st grade. That shit's awful. But having a process in place that prevents a young student's access to certain media or information, which, by the way, they have no say in themselves as students, is almost by definition a form of indoctrination itself. Boom, 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 boom. Fucking daily double, folks. This isn't happening at just a high school level or at schools for minors. This is happening at a university level also. I currently reside in the state of Texas for work, and there are significant efforts by Governor Abbott to roll back any DEI initiative. University employees and students have been sharing this list of words that they've been required to scrub from websites and syllabi. Any sort of media that is published by the state university system is not allowed to say anything that you're seeing on the screen right now. And I'd like to point out the absolute lunacy it is that you live in a state that borders Mexico and you're banning the word Latino. Like, make it make sense. And if you're scanning this list thinking to yourself, like, yeah, this looks pretty good to me, I'm like all for this, then I'm also willing to bet that you think Elon did a Roman salute during his inauguration speech. I want to highlight these real world events and how they're not too dissimilar from what's happening inside of this video game. The book chute, which again I characterized as a fictional character, isn't actually that much of an exaggeration after all. A character whose sole purpose is to dispose of information and block it from being distributed and disseminated to the greater public is really not that far off than some of the things that are happening in America today. Old World Blues as a DLC was kind of designed to poke fun at Red Scare era rhetoric as a whole, and we can see this through some of the quests given to the player, things like having to roleplay as a Chinese communist spy, or even testing a reverse-engineered Chinese stealth suit. We're not even a month into DT's presidency, and we're seeing the effects of platforming this kind of harmful rhetoric is to the mainstream. Things like the day one border ban and the constant vilification of China are almost comical when you realize that back in 2011, Obsidian Games foretold this prophecy. Fallout depicts a ruined, divided world consumed by atomic fire, a reality that is the result of a power struggle between two geopolitical superpowers that was accelerated by a technocratic oligarchy. Those who sowed the seeds of discords that the Wasteland inhabitants now have to deal with are largely left unpunished or unregulated in some capacity. They say that history rarely repeats itself, but rather that it rhymes. And the themes of consumerism and censorship and nationalism present in Old World Blues are looking a lot more like a prediction than they were a satire. I only hope that the next 4 years are kinder to us than what I expect them to be. That guy's a real Debbie Downer, am I right? In all seriousness, thanks for sticking around and watching the video. I really appreciate it. This video is not sponsored. This is purely made by me for love of the game, if you will. If you thought this video deserved it, maybe consider leaving a like or subscribing, perhaps leaving a thought or two down in the comment section below. My goal is to have a video out for every month of 2025, so I appreciate you being here for the start of that journey. And if you want to know what I'm up to next, maybe when I'm live on Twitch potentially, consider joining the Discord. Link is down in the description. But regardless, I appreciate your support. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you in the next one. Be good, be safe, don't do anything I wouldn't do. See ya.